Kirsanow. He's an attorney in Cleveland and a member of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. Peter, good morning.
Bob, how you doing? Only 14 days to opening day if they go forward with it, which I'm increasingly skeptical of.
Well, I've got two headlines here, and it's for those who don't know, you regularly count down to most important things in sports. You count down when you come on the number of days until opening day, or until the playoffs, or until the Super Bowl, or whatever the case might be. Well, you've never done the Super Bowl countdown. The Browns have never been close. But here's what I've got in front of me, Pete. In advance of your visit, I took a look-see, and it looks like the San Diego Padres are up in the air as to whether or not they will be starting their season after a state agency in California recommended a ban on large gatherings. So they're considering not having their opening. And then there is another. It is the Twins. Coronavirus puts Twins season opener in Oakland in jeopardy. Okay, same story because it's California. What I guess I'm asking you, Peter Kirsanow, is do you think that Rob Manfred, the owner or the commissioner of Major League Baseball, and the owners will pack 40,000 people into 15 home stadiums on May 26th and 27th when the season begins, right on the heels of the NBA canceling their season and the NCAA saying if we do have the NCAA tournament at all, it'll be in empty arenas?
Yeah, generally, Major League Baseball is the most sober of the major league sports. And I'm not saying it's not sober to cancel games. I think it's eminently reasonable from both an economic perspective because you've got to protect people and you've got to protect your franchises, but also from a common sense perspective. When you see medical professionals saying avoid large gatherings, I'm not a medical professional as opposed to the virologists on MSNBC or CNN. So you follow the folks who follow this kind of stuff, understand vectors and understand the probabilities of things spreading and being contagious. But I think after the examples you've indicated of the NBA, another major league sports entity, saying that they're going to suspend games until further notice. Now, admittedly, the NBA, you've got a closed venue, a closed space, circulating air, kind of like airliners that, kind of scare people. You don't want to be in a confined space like that. Not necessarily that that's going to increase probabilities of infection, but nonetheless, you want to be as prudent as possible. Given the fact that baseball is open air, you would think that there's less of a probability. But I think the example that they set, it's just like any other type of business model. You don't want to be the one who stepped out there, made a mistake, jeopardized individuals. Again, this is something that you want to be sober about and prudent about, so I wouldn't object to it. I think you have to view this in a clear-eyed fashion, but the business aspect of this says they probably do shut it down until further notice.
Yeah, and it's funny you mention airliners. If you've been to a ballpark lately, the seats are like airplane seats. They are so close together. You are literally on top of the person next to you. And what is baseball notorious for as well? The vendor is in the aisle, the guy orders the hot dog, and what happens? That hot dog is passed from one person to the next, to the next, to the next, all the way down. Money is passed back. Give that to the vendor for me. You are intimately on top of strangers and passing whatever is on your hands off to the next person on a regular basis. I cannot imagine baseball will open their season on time, given all of that. And given the fact that all it's going to take is one fan to get sick at a ball game for Major League Baseball to be on the receiving end of a lawsuit for billions saying you didn't take the necessary precautions to avoid this the way other leagues did.
Absolutely right. I think that's going to be the case. And I think you're going to see that spread not just to baseball, but in other large gatherings or even smaller gatherings. You talk to a lot of businesses, as I do, and they have already, most of them, those that at least have counsel, have been advising people with respect to, by people I mean their employees, vendors, et cetera, as to how to comport themselves. And there's a lot more telecommuting. I bet your listeners have noticed that the highways are not as packed on a rush hour. I think a lot of people have made the decision to telecommute, not necessarily self-quarantine. But nonetheless, there are businesses that are affording their employees the ability to stay at home, telecommute. They've issued instructions as to how they're supposed to behave if they suspect that they may be ill. So we're going to see a little bit more of that. The good news is that we are in mid-March, and it does appear, based on all information, again, I'm not a virologist, and I don't even play one on the radio, but I've listened to a number of professionals, and I've done a little bit of research on this for my own occupation, and that is there are hardly any instances of coronavirus in the southern hemisphere. And in places where it is, even in the northern hemisphere, where it may be still warm and humid, the virus doesn't spread under those circumstances, apparently. So when the summer months come around, there's a very good probability, as with the ordinary flu, that this is going to recede substantially. And again, being sober about it, we have to understand that the instances of this that we see are relatively small in comparison with other outbreaks that we've seen, such as swine flu and SARS. That doesn't mean we diminish or reduce our vigilance on this, but it does mean perspective is in order. And this is the first quote-unquote pandemic or large-scale outbreak that we've had since social media has permeated virtually every aspect of society. And Twitter and the Facebooks and other aspects of social media, I think, have propelled a kind of, I don't want to say hysteria, but I think have
I'll say it.
Raised the urgency level. And also, let's not forget, and this is a very true aspect of it, anybody who watches, if you watch the president's speech, and I don't know if you said this in an earlier part of your segment, Bob, but if you watch the president's speech and then you did as I did, flipped around to some of the other channels, the MSNBCs, what you saw was an appalling display of irresponsibility where they were, to a large extent, focused on the president's performance, not the performance in terms of imparting substance,
right,
but his performance and then
his delivery,
criticizing him. Exactly, it's truly extraordinary. So there may be those who don't think that the left is doing this and trying to be very magnanimous about it. I'm not one of them. I've got eyes, I can see, I can hear, and it's completely irresponsible, especially when you've got individuals' health, their economic stability at stake. The economy's taking a hit. I think it's going to rebound substantially. I don't think this is going to be anything that's long-term, but it's going to cause a dislocation. And it makes a lot of people nervous. So,
Pete, I want you to dive deeper into that before we talk about immigration in your latest piece for National Review. The economy. By the way, I get what they're saying about last night. The president didn't look comfortable. He doesn't project comfort and strength in those kinds of things. It's not his forte. His forte is speaking off the cuff, not reading off the prompter. It is not his best type of place. But that's irrelevant. The substance is what is relevant. How do you feel his decision making, not really on the travel restriction from Europe, but the Small Business Administration portion, the tax breaks, meaning not going to force every American and every American small business owner to pay their taxes by April 15th so they can keep their capital and inject that into the economy. How do you feel about his steps being taken to try to stabilize what is right now an economy that is on the brink because of all of this hysteria and all of this fear-mongering?
I think a couple of things. One is the individual items of the agenda are less important than the whole. The objective here was, I think, a couple of things: to calm people down, impart information, and make sure America is safe. Without question, what he's done is taken the boldest actions that we've seen any president in our lifetimes take with respect to anything similarly situated. Obama didn't come anywhere close to this, and I don't want to make comparisons, to anybody, but frankly, that's what the left has been doing. They've been, criticizing him. So you have to put things into perspective. And he's taken very bold steps. And let's face it, he got criticized for the very first step that he took, which was probably, by all accounts, I think almost every medical professional agrees, the most important and effective step he could have taken. Yet he got criticized for being xenophobic and racist as a result of that.
Yep.
So I think the whole was good. As far as evaluating the individual components of that whole, to be determined. We have to see. I happen to think that his objective here was to make sure to protect the U.S. and national interest, but also to calm markets and calm fears. We will recover economically. There's going to be a dislocation. We've seen it substantially. Anybody who has got enough bravery to look at the Dow Jones, and it's difficult for me to take a peek every now and then, knows that this is something really significant, but the fundamentals, as a lot of folks have pointed out, the fundamentals are very good. Look, I'm a labor and employment lawyer, and I've told you a number of times, Bob, and everyone who will listen, for 35 years, I have looked at the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports at the beginning of every single month religiously, and I've never seen numbers like this at any time. They are amazing. They're truly eye-popping. That's going to take a hit. The president understands that. He
Right.
has marshaled resources to try to soften that hit. But we have to do what's necessary to protect the United States of America. I think he's done that by issuing a travel ban on Europe. Very smart in the way he's applied it. The economic remedies, I think, again, to be determined. I don't know that a payroll tax cut is going to do much substantively, but I think the cosmetics of this to assure people are very important. And merely proposing it, I think, is something that helps calm markets and individuals a little bit more. Employers are going to be taking a wait-and-see attitude. I don't think there's going to be any immediate rush to lay off people or anything else like that. So I think we're going to be in decent shape there. And the most important thing, of course, is the health. And I think that the remedies that he has implemented and all the folks that he's got marshaled to the task are going to do a good job.
Peter, I still want to talk about quid pro Joe and immigration. Can you hang with me for a moment?
I sure can.
Peter Kirsanow will give us one more quick segment. He wrote a great piece, which I'll tweet out during this break for National Review. Bob Frants in for Hugh Hewitt.